we're looking at the top 10 right fielders for 2020. For those that don't know what this is based on what MLB Network does with their top 10 lists every year. And they do it for the year ahead. They kind of look at 2 years. Obviously, they weigh the most recent year heavily, more heavily. But the other year definitely comes into play. And of course, this isn't a fantasy ranking, so defense definitely matters. It's not the only thing, but a strong defense, mediocre bat guy can definitely get in at certain positions. And I would say right field would be one of those. I think you'll see on the first base list, that's not really going to happen. You're not going to have somebody who it really picks it at first, but can't hit a lick. They're not going to make it. But it right field, center field, up the middle, and even third base, I could. But left field, first base, no. And of course, catcher. Of course, catcher can definitely have that. So we're going to start off with a few honorable mentions here. And we're going to get into a guy who actually, his defense is why he's here right now. And that's Hunter Renfro. Because my guy did not hit that well this past year. He actually really struggled at the dish, kind of falling below league average, thanks in large part to a 216 batting average. But this defensive surge, in which he had 22 defensive runs saved and 6 outs above average, those are 2 different defensive metrics, are why he's here now. And I figure at least mention him. We know he has transcendent pop. I'm not really expecting him to cut the strikeouts to some degree that's going to make him even like a 270 hitter or 260 or anything like that. But if he can get back into the 240, 250 range, I think that would really work out. I think going to Tampa Bay is going to help, and I'm eager to see what he can do. Another honorable mention is Jorge Soler, who had obviously an amazing season. I will say though, some who kind of tab him as coming out of nowhere or this is his only good season, it's his only full season, right? We can say that. But he actually really did a lot of good work in 18 before injury. Now, he did spend 107 of his 162 games. He was one of the few guys to play every game at DH, but I don't think they're doing a DH only show because JD Martinez is on this list. And they've had some other guys that seemed like they might be DH only. I don't think that they're doing a DH only show. Although, as I say that, I wonder... Jordan Alvarez didn't make the left field list. He's not in the right field list, so... what are they doing with him? I don't know. But I'm going off the list that they provided, and that's what we've got here. So, we know what Soler can do offensively. His power blew up. He had a 102-point jump in his slugging. And the transcendent power actually saw him lead the league in no-doubt homers, which is a new thing from Baseball Savant. And a no-doubt homer is simply a home run that would be calculated to have left every ballpark. So he hit 30 such home runs out of his 48. That's pretty sick because we know there's some big parks out there. And honestly, it shouldn't be that surprising because he plays in a park that's not that easy to go yard in. So that's why he's only an honorable mention. The defense isn't there. He doesn't really play defense. And one great year of offense wasn't really enough for me to kind of get him in the top 10. This is a stacked list. I'll point that out here as well. Obviously, we're not going to watch all 48 of his homers here. Sorry for those of you Soler fans thinking they were going to get through this entire thing. Next up is Chuck Nasty on the honorable mention. And again, this is where defense hurts. Now, he has to play defense because he's in the National League, but I couldn't quite find room for him. You guys might disagree with my 10 and maybe even 9 with him. I understand that. And there's some shuffling that I think could occur. I actually wound up with him as an honorable mention because I'm going for the all-around player. And the offense is great. I was cognizant to make sure I wasn't just making a fantasy list, right? Because obviously fantasy, Charlie Blackmon's like, the 6th right fielder? He's way up there for sure because of what he does in Coors Field. But the defense, man, it's not good. He actually moved from center field to right field and got a little bit worse. He went from -8 to -9 in his outs above average. His stolen bases evaporated, but again, that's more of a fantasy concern. I was impressed that he's dead even against righties and lefties. He had a 940 OPS against both sides of the plate, even. I just love baseball stuff like that where the numbers just line up, because that's wild that it was dead even 940. First off, it's, you know, round number with a 0 at the end, and it's the exact same against righties and lefties. He pushed his offense back up after 2018, but wasn't quite enough to make my list for Charlie Blackmon. We'll see what he does this year. I do wonder if soon, well, the NL should already have the DH, but if not, I wonder if he needs to get transitioned into the American League at some point to kind of save his career, because it's hard to put him out there in the field, man. He does not make great plays defensively. Fun player, though. Very fun player. Now let's get into the top 10, and we're going to start with Brian Anderson for the Marlins. Now, he's a quiet contributor. Some of you might not even know much about him. I will say that if you play MLB The Show and you have never tried his silver card in Battle Royale, give it a shot. That card is one of those silvers that absolutely slaps. He only hit 261, 342, 468 last year, which is not knocking your socks off. I understand. But that's a 114 WRC plus, so solidly above average. He's just a quality hitter, quality above average defender, or excuse me, solid average defender. He's kind of right there at baseline, but he's an above average offensive player. You add those two things up, that's a good player. He's top 50 in all of baseball in WAR at 6.4 since 2018. So I gave him the nod here because he's a more complete player than Blackmon, even though Blackmon's offense is obviously better. But you also have to consider Marlins Stadium versus Coors Field. If you look at the WRC plus, Brian Anderson's at 114 last year, Charlie Blackmon at 125. They're not that far apart. To be intellectually honest, though, you guys know, if you've ever heard me talk about them before, you know that I think WRC plus is a little bit too harsh on Rockies players. So I want to be clear on that I think that the offense is a little bit more split in my mind, but WRC plus has them pretty close. So Brian Anderson was able to make my top 10 list. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Nick Castellanos, and this is why I said that 9, 10, 11, with Blackmon being 11 as an honorable mention, you could really kind of push them into whatever order you wanted, and I would totally understand wanting to do that. But it was clear he couldn't wait to get out of Detroit, and at this point, with the way the team is and how difficult that part can be sometimes, although it's actually better than a lot of people think, it was clear he couldn't wait to get out. His WRC plus jumped from 105 to 154 with the Cubs. He's still waiting to find a home right now. I imagine he'll play outfield wherever he goes, whether it's left or right. Third base is just not the position for him. I understand why MLB is slotting him in at right field. If he had signed somewhere and it was announced that Castellanos was going to be a right fielder or a left fielder, then he would have been on that show. But for this, he's a right fielder. He's 26th in WRC plus since 2018 with a 126 mark. That's a minimum of 1,000 plate appearances. But he's 55th in WAR because of the bad defense at 5.7. In fairness, he improved his defense to -7 outs above average from -24 in 2018. So credit where it's due, but he's still a bad defender. I really think he's a top shelf hitter, though. He's really, really good. Nick Castellanos is. If you wanted to kind of, re-slot Castellanos, Anderson, Blackmon, I can understand it, but I feel comfortable with Anderson and Castellanos in and Blackmon out. All right, next up is... Wait a minute. Oh, no. Did I mess up my playlist? Might have messed up my playlist. Please hold. Yep. Next up is Joseph Gallo. Sorry. You know who's coming on after that. Sorry. Blew that one. We got the Transcendent Power, right? So I think I originally had... I know what it was. I made a last-minute change, and I forgot to fix the playlist on it because I had Gallo 7 and JD 8, and I flipped them, despite the fact that JD is essentially a DH, and I'll get into that in a moment. Gallo has Transcendent Power. We know that. He always had that. But he also had a 50-point jump in batting average last year. However, he only played 70 games. So we don't know how real it is or what to expect really going forward. It was awesome watching him. He was playing at an MVP clip, but he still struck out 38% of the time. And that tells me that 253 batting average is flimsy, and it's probably not going to last. And here's another factor as to why. He had an insane surge against lefties that was fueled by a 500 BABIP in 90 plate appearances. 500. Now, 90 plate appearances is a small sample, but a 500 BABIP is bananas, even for that kind of sample. So he hit 333, 427, 747 against lefties. 217, 372, 530 against righties. You face a lot more righties than lefties. I had to put him down at 8, and frankly, I would understand if somebody wanted to go a little bit lower with him based on the fact that we really only have 70 great games of offense, and even that was a little bit shaky. Now, where he does get a boost, he can play a capable center field, and he excels in left or right. Of course, we're listing him as a right fielder here, but I love him on one of the corners, and I like that he can even play center. So even though this is a right field list, his versatility does give him a little extra boost there, and that's why I've got Joey Gallo 8. Now, like I said, you already know who's coming next. We got to go backwards on the playlist to Jay Dizzle. And look at this. We open with a defensive highlight for JD. Got to be honest, though, I think it's the only one in the clip. I'm fairly certain that's his only one. Throwing out Trey Mancini there with a hell of a throw by JD. But that's not what he's here for. He played 107 games at DH, actually the same amount as Jorge Soler. So, again, I'm guessing that there's not going to be a DH-only show, and that's why they made sure that JD got included. He fell from his MVP level, and it's funny that when a guy kind of establishes an MVP level to the degree that JD has, and then falls down, and man, I even hate using terminology like that, but he fell down from a 167 and 170 WRC plus in 17 and 18 to 139. He was still essentially 40% better than league average. He was still an absolute monster. He just wasn't the very top of the scale. He was simply the next level. So even as an offense-only guy, he's a 3-win player, which is, solid all-star level player. And nothing in the bat seems to be slowing down. Even, he's into his 30s, age 32. He doesn't strike out a lot for such a preeminent slugger. He takes his walks. His batting averages remain high. He's got a great BABIP because he can spray the ball. He hits line drives as well as fly balls. Keeps the ball off the ground. That was kind of the change in JD Martinez when he joined the Tigers. He's like, I got to get the ball off the damn ground and my career will open up. And it absolutely did. By the way, interesting to note that he's actually on a 3-year trend of dropping his strikeout rate. So that's dangerous for the rest of the league, that JD Martinez is actually getting better offensively in terms of his contact rate. He's a 0 defensively, though, and so 7 is about the highest I could get him, and that's only because Joey Gallo right now is still such a big question mark. Next up is not Gallo, skipping him, and we're going in to Kep Dog, my boy Max Kepler. Big fan of his, and I got to be honest, this is a level here at 6, and then we jump up like 2 levels of excellence into the top 5. The top 5 is so loaded. That's to take nothing away from Kepler, but rather to promote the other guys that we're going to get into. And I want to talk about Kepler. His surge here, I got to be honest, it could have been better. And I'll tell you why. Because it was fueled by a huge breakout against lefties. He had an 880 OPS against them after a career of a 680 OPS. So a 200-point improvement. Imagine if he didn't have a 223 BABIP against righties last year, which left him with a 236 batting average. He could have been better with a little bit of good fortune, even some even luck. Like, he didn't even have to be super lucky, just a few more hits dropping in. Could have been insane, and yet his season was still incredible. Kepler hit 252, 336, 519 with 36 homers, 90 ribbies, 98 runs. Great season all around, and fantastic defender. Now, he had 281 ISO, which is slugging minus batting average. That gets to the heart of your power. He had a 281 ISO against righties with 27 homers. So the power was still there. The batting average wasn't because of that BABIP. He's got a great contact and strong eye, which he always had. And that's why if you're in fantasy baseball those of you who were in on Kepler, you were probably buying because you kept seeing that he doesn't strike out a lot. He knows how to take a walk. There could be something here. He had 3 years where he was just below average, 93, 94, 98 WRC plus. He was slowly inching up, but we were waiting for him to hit that jump. He hit that jump last year, and he's been great. I got to be honest, this is probably what a lot of Nomar Mazara fans are hoping for, but he doesn't have the foundational skills that Kepler does. Kepler's also a really strong defender. He split his time between right and center field, and he was tied for the 10th highest outs above average with 7. Now we move into the big boys, the next level here. And it's going to start with the Judge, Aaron Judge. Just an absolute monster here. We're going to get a defensive play to start. And I want to highlight his defense here. I'm going to go reverse compared to where I've been with a lot of the other guys going offense into their defense. I want his defense to get love. He's not just good for his size or won't hurt ya or hangs in there. No. He's excellent. He's a badass defender. He's agile. He's athletic. When we often say these stuff about this player could play this sport, this player could play that sport. When we say stuff like Aaron Judge could play football, he absolutely could because he has the athleticism and durability, I think. Well, and I know he's been hurt a bit in baseball, but those injuries are a little bit different than I think football would be. He would have the ability to play football and be an absolute monster. Now, why is he 5 then if I'm propping him up this much? Just 214 games in the last 2 years. Injuries have gotten him, and they've been swing-based injuries, and that's just, part of these big bodies. They can be a little bit susceptible. His teammate Giancarlo Stanton can kind of relate. Now, Stanton has actually had some other injuries that have been fluky, like getting hit in the face by Mike Fiers. Not quite like the Astros got hit in the face by Mike Fiers, am I right? Anyway, he's still 9th in WRC plus at 146. And despite only 214 games, here's the amazing stat for Aaron Judge. He's still top 20 in WAR. So despite all the missed time, he's a 9.7 WAR. That's incredible to me. That's really incredible to me. He and Max Muncy are the only two with fewer than 1,100 plate appearances who are in the top 20 of WAR. So that's a huge credit to what he can do on both sides of the ball. Aaron Judge is an absolute monster. I dinged him primarily for the games played. Everything else is really sharp. I don't know that they're fluky injuries that I can say that he might not be kind of that threat to get hurt more regularly than most guys. So that's what I'm a little bit nervous of, and that's why this next guy was ahead of him, because I think the raw numbers of Bryce Harper, if you do a 1-to-1 with these two guys, I think Judge comes out ahead in a decent number of them, especially like rate stats, but that's also because he didn't play as much. So you can't really hold Harper to that same standard when he's answering the bell every day and Judge isn't. So just comparing the two over the last 2 years, you have Judge at the 9.7 WAR. Harper's right there at 8. But again, I got to give Judge credit. He did it in 100 fewer games. So why did I put Harper above? Again, he's answering the bell every day. His debut season in Philadelphia was still a 4.6 WAR. I think the focus on his batting average obscures the fact that he had a 372 OBP and a 510 slug. Every month was north of an 800 OPS. Like there was no real slump there. And I know months are arbitrary cutoffs, but we look at them, right? We generally see everyone has like a bad month somewhere. He really didn't. And he had a 941 OPS in the second half. I think he really started to settle in. So I'm obviously dinging Judge a little bit for the missed time. I'm giving Harper a little bit of leeway for the transition year. Whenever a guy goes to be the man with a mega deal the first year, I like to give him a little leeway to kind of transition. I think once the second half hit, he really hit his stride and became a Philly, and I think he's going to be awesome. So if you want to flip these two, I really can't argue, but I did go with Harper over Judge because he's played 102 more games over the last 2 years, and I put some value on that, even though Judge has been amazing in his 214 games. So now we get to the top 3, and I think everyone's top 3 could be a little bit different in order. So I'll build up a little anticipation here by taking a little chuggy chug. And let's see here. Who could it be? Boom! I went with the young buck. I had Ronald Acuna at number 3. Now, again, when you think about who the other 2 are, if you've made your list or if you've looked at the list of available players here, you understand that we're dealing in a superstar tier. Even Harper and Judge are super duper stars here. There's 5 superstars at this position. Compare that to left field. If you guys were here last week when we did left field and how atrocious that was. I didn't do a full show like this, but we watched the MLB show and I made my list, and does not have the star power of this position. So Acuna, obviously, at his young age, it would not be unreasonable to think that he can get even better. He had a great rookie campaign and followed it up brilliantly with a 5.6 WAR thanks to a 280, 365, 518 line. He almost went 40-40, which is a little bit of like a fantasy thing, but it's still really cool. And it's a good shorthand to show how dynamic of a player somebody is, right? If you can hit for that kind of power with that kind of speed, that's why it stands out. 30-30 seasons are cool too, but they're a lot more frequent. 40-40 is just kind of that next level that you can have that kind of power, that kind of running ability is really something else. But he was amazing this year. Solid defense, particularly in right field where he put up 5 DRS, defensive runs saved, and he kind of bounced around all over the 3 fields depending on what they needed. He can play all 3 capably. I think right field is his best one though. I think he's a little short in center compared to like a teammate Ender and Ciarte. But again, if Ender went down, you could put Acuna in there and you would still be one of the better center fielders in the game in terms of what you were getting out of him. But I think in right field, it gives him a chance to really show off his defensive skills. He's got a great arm, which really took a step last year. Yes, you can improve your arm strength, at least to a certain degree. Not, I couldn't make my arm excellent because I'm old and unathletic, but a true talent like Acuna with practice and work was able to increase his arm strength and make his arm a lot better. So I got him 3 because the other 2 have just been reaching higher heights, which again, this is not an analysis of what they've done, but that informs what they're able to do. And I don't think either of the next 2 are slowing down whatsoever. So while Acuna is definitely on the upward trajectory, I still favor the other 2 over him, though I understand others who might not have. I have Mookie Betts number 2. Tough decision between him and the number 1 guy, especially when I'm with this first stat. This alone almost made me change my mind on what I wanted to do at the number 1 spot. But Mookie Betts has 17 WAR in the last 2 seasons. Only 1 guy is ahead of him. Fish Boy, Mike Trout. That's incredible. I mentioned this with JD Martinez. This was actually kind of a Red Sox thing last year, except for maybe Devers and Xander. But a few other guys had great seasons that were considered down years because they came down from such a high level. So, yeah, he didn't match his 185 WRC plus from 2018 or his 10 wins. Instead, he was only a 135 with 7 wins. That's disgusting if that's your down season. And yes, I'm going to keep using air quotes because it's how ridiculous it is to say that he had anything of a down year. It's not a down year. It was actually better than 2017. So excellent year. Mookie Betts is incredibly transcendent. His defense is amazing. He's tied for the 10th highest outs above average at 7 with Kepler, actually, who we mentioned earlier. He's tied for the 7th highest at 11 in 18. So each of the last 2 years, he's been excellent in the outfield. We know he's got a great arm as well. He's 4th in WRC plus at 158 over the last 2 years. And I mean, he's truly brilliant. He really, really is. He has a strong case for number 1, but I actually pushed him down to number 2 for this next guy. The man, the myth, the legend. Spam those Christian Yelich's in the chat, please. He is the number 1 here. And look, what he gives back defensively, I think he makes up for with the offensive production that he's put up the last 2 years. It's been absolutely phenomenal what Christian Yelich has been able to do for the last 2 seasons. He really was tracking toward a second MVP. He might not have beaten Bellinger at the end there, but the way Bellinger kind of plateaued in the second half, partly due to injury, if Yelich had stayed strong or even obviously jumped up, I think he'd have overtaken Bellinger, put some distance between the two, and won his second straight MVP. He's second to Trout in WRC Plus over the last 2 years with a 170 mark to Trout's 185, which both of those numbers are just so sick. Like, that's just so dumb that those are their numbers. He has 15.4 WAR over the last 2 years, 80 homers, 327, 415, 631. He's incredible. Only Mike Trout and Eugenio Suarez have more homers at 84 and 83 respectively. Yelich has that everything offensive profile where he doesn't really strike out and he can take walks, so he can hit for average, give you the OBP, give you the power. He throws in speed as well, which, again, the stolen bases, they do help in real life. They're more of a fantasy component, so I don't want to overrate them, but they absolutely add to what he's able to do. Now, you'd think that this might not be good. He was -4 in outs above average last year, but that finished 69th. So did he not have a nice year defensively? Or come on, it's pretty nice. I'm just saying. No, but truthfully, his defense definitely holds him back. And frankly, I got to be honest. While I do stand by my rankings, I'm not stubborn enough to suggest that there's no flexibility there and that somebody couldn't reasonably put Betts #1 over Yelich and say Yelich is #2. And frankly, if you really wanted to make the case and you go Betts, Acuna, Yelich, I get it. But for me, it's Yelich, Betts, Acuna. And that is my top 10. While these Yelich highlights run, I'm going to run them back down from the honorable mentions and then 10-1. Hunter Renfro, Jorge Soler, and Charlie Blackmon got my honorable mentions. Brian Anderson comes in at number 10. Nick Castellanos needs a home, but he's in at number 9. Joey Gallo comes in at 8. We got to see a little bit more than those 70 games of excellence. JD Martinez, he's a DH, but he counts for this, so he's in at number 7. Max Kepler at 6. Aaron Judge at 5. Bryce Harper at 4. Ronald Acuna Jr. at 3. Mookie Betts at 2. And Christian Yelich at 1.